Hello guys, Chris here and welcome to episode 30 of the Pocket Podcast. We've made it to episode 30. It is just the beginning, plenty more to come, but this episode is an awesome one with Timothy Smith. This guy went on MAFS, Married at First Sight, here in Australia, which is where he amassed all of his audience and his following. But before he went on MAFS, his story is quite literally one that is out of a movie. He was living over in Canada, and I'm not going to get too much into it, but let's just say he got asked by some people when he was working behind a bar, and these people were gangsters to say the least. They asked him if he could fly a helicopter, and he could not fly a helicopter, but what he did say was yes, and that's been a theme for his whole life, saying yes and building the plane on the way down, no pun intended. But that mission involved smuggling drugs from Canada to the US, and that's just scratching the surface of this guy's amazing story. It was an awesome podcast, and I could not wait for you guys to check this one out. So I'm going to stop talking, but without further ado, let's drive straight into the episode with Timothy Smith. You guys enjoy. Tim, before the show, I got you to write down a quote for me. It was something that you love, something that came to mind straight away. And you wrote, "It's okay not to have it all figured out."
Yep.
Talk to me about that quote and what that means to you, my friend.
Well, clearly I'm 52 now.
52 going on 30.
52 going on, I would say 15 some days. But 52, definitely going on to my 20s. And I don't have it figured out. I never, it's a very funny, when you've been on TV or you've done things, people think that you've got your shit figured out. Like this is the path I was meant to take. But yeah, I don't have it figured out. It chops and changes from month to month. The overall plan changes. It's okay.
It's not, you're not supposed to have it figured out though.
I know, but I talk to a lot of people contact me now and sort of say they're lost or why can't I do this or why can't I do that? And predominantly they're in their 20s. And the advice I give to them is, you're in your 20s. Don't worry about it. I think there's way too much pressure on people. And unfortunately, I think social media can be one of the greatest tools that we've ever invented, along with one of the worst things we've ever invented. It's how you use that tool.
I think it's honestly schooling as well. And when people going up and they're being told they need to have this, they need to do this traditional path that you should be living.
Fuck school.
No. Yeah. No, but seriously though, because the feeling that someone gets as a grade 11, grade 12 kid at school that doesn't know what they want to do is like, I am in the wrong here. It's like, no, you're 17 years old. How do you expect to know what to do? You haven't even lived yet.
100%.
And then people are surprised when they want to drop out of uni after 12 months. It's like, you don't even know what you want to do. You rushed into that because you felt peer pressure to do something, or you wanted to please someone else, and then it led you to where you are today. I guess that's an interesting thing around just like you're not supposed to have it figured out. And I think the reason for that is because you climb one mountain, there's another mountain, and you got to figure out how to get to that mountain. And there's just levels to things as well.
Look, totally. And you touching on school, and look, I'm not against school. I was fucking horrible at school. But I mean to say, am I going to shoot myself in the foot? When somebody goes, I've got an arts degree or a degree in breakdancing. That's like,
I hope that they got that degree because they loved breakdancing and that's it.
Totally.
Yeah.
But when you go, I just didn't know what to do, so I did an arts degree, and you come out with a HECS debt of 70 Gs, like if you don't know what to do, go to Bali and just hang out and learn about yourself. Don't rack up a $70,000 or $100,000 HECS, debt and then go, the degree it's not what I wanted to do. Like, just take some time out to figure it out. You don't have to go to school to figure it out and just do a degree because you wanted to do a degree.
So what did you do back then? if we go to that time when you were finishing school and you said you were a rascal, you were absolute, you said your school wasn't for you.
I was dyslexic. I am dyslexic. Back then they would have called it illiterate. I was literally bullied from the minute I got into school till I left at 14 and a half.
You left at 14 and a half?
Yeah, at halfway through the 9th grade is when I left school.
And so when you're saying bullied, what did that look like?
You know, because dyslexia is it's really weird that if I look back in school, I can't, I couldn't retain information. When I sat in a science class, a stratocumulus cloud, the height that they sit or how weather patterns and everything formed, I couldn't, I would do a test the next week and I'd get 0 because I just didn't understand it. I couldn't spell. And it was I just actually went back to my hometown last weekend and I walked through my old primary school and high school and I was with somebody and I showed her the classroom in which I literally peed myself with fear about this teacher who grabbed me by the head and threw me down the hallway because I got 1 out of 10 for spelling. And made me and another guy, Chris, I won't say his last name, stand in the corner and look at the class. We had to stand there all day, and he said, "This is what stupid looks like." So, it's I don't have fond memories of it, but the funny thing is later in life, or when you do figure it out, I wasn't a helicopter pilot. We'll get into that later, but in regards to weather patterns or science or whatever, physics in flying, I understand it all now. I read about it. I understand it. It's just some things just don't click at that time. So I didn't have it figured out. My first job when I left school was digging ditches with a shovel, and I'm 52 and I still don't have it figured out, but it's quite exciting not to have it figured out. Don't put pressure on yourself. It'll come together.
But I guess the reason it's exciting is because you've had so many different times where you haven't figured it out and then it's just figured out and it's just happened. Life's happened and then you kind of can get to where you are and go, yeah, I'm actually quite happy with where I am right now, would you say?
You have happy times. There's always going to be shit times. There'll always be.
It's a cost for the happy times.
I've been in more shit times. We were just talking there about business, and I won't, you said about things that didn't work.
You can say whatever.
We didn't get into things that did work, but the things that did work would never be possible, or the lessons you would never learn from the things that didn't work. If you listen to any successful person, I'll put it down to comedy, because comedians love sitting around with other comedians talking about the shit nights. They love talking about the road trips they took where they sucked for 2 weeks. They find that funny, and it gives you a great perspective on comedy, and it's the same thing. Like we were just talking, I wanted to hear about the things that didn't work and what you actually learned from rather than the things that did work, because that's what makes you. That's how many times did you fail and get up? That's fucking cool.
Yeah, one of my mentors, Adam, he actually did an event, and it was a 2-day event, a really extensive kind of boot camp event that we went to. And anyway, a pre-event survey that he asked everyone to fill out. One of the questions was, how much money have you lost? And I was thinking about it. It was a weird question. And so I entered it in, like, lost the money in these businesses, X, Y, and Z. First day of the event, we got there and he pulls the screen up of the survey of everyone's responses. And he points to the ones that have lost the most amount of money. It was like $1 million plus. And he's like, those are the people I would invest in before everyone else, because they've actually learnt more than other people. Yeah. And it's through the failures and the fuck ups where you actually learn, if you choose to learn. When you actually sit in there and go, okay, this is fucked up. What lessons can I see here? I do want to go back though. You were saying about these hectic things where you were standing at the front of your class and like, this is what stupid looks like.
Yeah.
Have you ever got to a stage in your life where you've looked back at that time and you think maybe that's rubbed off or played a role on you? Because I'm interested in labeling theory, and when people get labeled as things as young kids, they can kind of carry those into their adult life. Do you think you carried any of those things that people told you, or those inabilities to perform in a traditional classroom like that?
Oh, most people secretly I have. Secretly, we all put masks on, and you won't ever show the world completely who you are, like in that sense. I just find it funny that people look at other people. We're all sort of looking at each other, but really understand we're all ducks on a pond, you know, with our little legs, and everyone's legs are going at different speeds. Just because you look over and you go, shit, he doesn't even look like he's breaking a sweat. You don't know how fast his legs are going underneath the water. That little duck could just be absolutely motoring just to keep up with you, and that's very much like us. Like I tend to find what happened to me at school. Yeah, I'll never forget. Like I'll never forget it, and I actually use it now as a positive over a negative. Yeah.
It's just because recently when I'm being really reflective, I kind of look at different things that I've done in my childhood or different upbringings, and I kind of go, maybe I'm doing that because of what happened back then. Because I think the more like self-aware you can be and think about those times and think about things that you're doing now that maybe you don't like you're doing, there's a lesson in there. Do you feel like are you quite a self-reflective person? Do you reflect much or no?
Well, it's funny you'd say that, is because I just went back to my hometown after 30 years, and I had a lot of fond memories. I'm from a small country town in central Queensland, and I was here in Melbourne last Tuesday night, and I just said to the dogs, because I live with two dogs, and I said to the girls, let's pack up and head back. I just wanted to walk around this tiny little town. There was a festival on that I hadn't been, and I just wanted to see where I came from and where I'm at now. And I wouldn't say I'm at anywhere, but I just wanted to reflect on that. So the 2,000 kilometre drive up and the 2,000 kilometre drive back was just a lot of thinking, and I got up there and did the walk around. I was only there for, I'd say, 2 days, and then drove back. And it was just to get myself realigned and never forget where you come from, for good or for bad.
Do you think that helps, those drives, those solo just drives of thinking?
It does me. It does. When you're around people all the time, just don't forget who you are. And don't, especially just don't forget who you are. I was talking to somebody this morning, and he goes, do you get tired of people coming up? Because, you know, after being on the show, everyone, it's really funny, every small town, I got my beard shaved in Gundawindi. And I remember walking up the street and people in Gundawindi, every place I went to, everyone, you know, somebody points or somebody says, can I take a photo or whatever. He goes, do you ever get tired of it? And I said, no, because weirdly enough, if by me getting a photo or saying hello to somebody that day makes their day, you'll never know, because I was actually in that spot about 6 years ago when I said hello to somebody that I recognised from TV, and they just sort of blew me off and walked off. And she didn't know that was the lowest point of my life, and I felt like a dickhead when she actually did it. And I always sort of said, no matter how I feel, I'm never going to do that to somebody, because you don't know what's happening in their life.
And when you get the positive response from them, or you hear someone's story and how much you've helped them in any way, shape or form, it's like this level of inspiration that is beyond everything else.
It's the craziest endorphin that you could get. I mean, I make no lies. I've done enough cocaine to sedate a small herd of elephants, but you know, in my previous life, but helping people or understanding that your story or something's inspired them is, it's unmatched.
Because I go back to this time that kind of changed everything for me. I was a really money-driven person. That was kind of my main driver for me. And I really started gaining a lot of traction on social media. And I was in Burleigh Heads, and I was with this girl, and we were walking, and we're on the Burleigh Hill watching the sunrise one morning. And I remember I just look behind me on the hill, and there's this lady in her 40s sitting on the hill, holding her 7-year-old son in her arms, and we locked eyes. And the first thing that left her mouth, not even a hello or anything, she just said, "You've saved my life on multiple occasions." Those words left her mouth. And I just froze up. It was out of the blue. It was first thing in the morning, and I froze up. And like, you can't help but just hug her, right? And start hearing her story, and you find out that, she's gone through a really hectic divorce. She's living in a van with her son, and you could just look in her eyes and tell that she was wrecked. And that interaction, like, in itself, changed everything for me. And like, I've had it so many times, and imagine all the people around the world that never say that, never get to meet you, right? And so that for me was like, I just need to keep making an impact, and everything else will flow. Like, if that makes me feel the way that makes me feel better than any money would ever make me feel, I just need to keep doing that, and then everything else can flow. When you meet these people in person, do you and you're talking about this inspiration you get, like, is there a driver to keep wanting to help people from doing that?
There is. There 100% is. It's and like I said, in the world of social media, the funny thing is, people say, and people go, "Oh, do you get paid to go on these podcasts, do podcasts?" And I'm like, then you're missing the point. The point's the message. Like, if you were like, I get more of a kick out of meeting different people, and you're in the same mindset to actually make a difference in somebody's life. Like, when you get that one message that I've gotten a message on LinkedIn, which I've actually saved, and it's this one guy that said, no, it's his wife, sorry. And then he wrote me a message, and it's his wife just going, and they were from Germany or something. And he just said, "My husband, after watching you on TV opening up, he's just become a completely different person. He's getting help. He's doing this and that." And then he wrote me back, and we've had this bit of interaction. And this is people, from Germany. Mm. So it's crazy. Yeah.
And you mentioned there was that time where you, and the driver for you to want to give back as well, in terms of a little bit anyway, was you mentioned you were at your lowest and you saw someone you looked up to online and they didn't give you a bar of it.
Well, what it was is I went through a really bad depression about 6 years ago, just with everything. It was the lowest point. I actually did attempt to finish myself, and then I got help with the Alfred Hospital here and a thing called the CAT team, and so then I was working through it. And not that I was a big fan of Married at First Sight, but it must have been 6 years ago. And I recognised somebody from TV at Coles, and I went to say hello to them. But I don't know, they were in a pissy mood or whatever. But what they didn't realise is that was my first time I walked out of my apartment in 2 or 3 weeks, and I needed food. And normally I wouldn't say hello, and I don't know why I attempted to. And to get that reaction made me feel, just made me feel like shit. And I always vowed I'd never do that if I ever got out of this hole.
And you don't really know what people are going through, as you said earlier, and how much of an impact that can make for them. Like,
you haven't got a clue. I mean, what's that Will Smith movie? Not that I'm a fan of Will Smith. I think he's a dickhead. Where he plays that salesman selling that machine. Anyway, sure. So it's a true story about a guy that he's got his son, and he's selling these stupid, these FOD machines. They're living in a homeless shelter. He's trying to get a job as a broker, and he went for the interview, but they have nothing. He's on the bus, and one of the guys from the interviews trying to catch this cab, this old guy, and he says, "Oh, can you just lend me $5? I'll pay it back later." And that was the only $5 he had. But because he was in a suit, this guy just assumed $5 wasn't a big deal, but that was his accommodation for the night. And then they had to sleep in a train station. And so you never know. You never know where anyone's at.
And you mentioned, I do want to go to that time when you were really low, didn't want to leave the house. Was there main drivers for that depression, or when in reflection?
I got deported back to Australia. I'd lost my home, all my friends in Canada, and I was back in Australia, didn't know anyone. I was trying to, I kind of had to make a decision because I had a really good life over there. I had good friends, I had a life, I had everything, and that was just taken away like that. And look, it was my own fault. It was something I did many years before that, and that's the price I had to pay. I'm not pissed about it. I did something wrong, and that was the price. I just didn't realise how many times I had to keep paying. So I'd come back to Australia, then it was another decision to make. I'd done a little bit of fly-in and fly-out work, but when you come back and you're trying to build a life in a new country, even though I sound Australian, I am Australian, I hadn't been here in a lot of years. And so I did fly in and fly out and realised that I'm never going to create a life. I take my hat off to all those people that do it, but you've got to have a few things in place before you do that. Friends, family, and I don't really have any family. And just creating friends is almost like creating a relationship. You got to put time into friends. Some people will stick around, some people won't. Some people you'll have for 6 months, a couple of years, and then, they fade away, or you meet new people, and, you've got to build a base. And when you're just starting out in a new country, I decided not to do fly in and fly out and do real estate. You're also looking for something that's going to pay you. And I was doing real estate and I wasn't very good at it. I was actually shit. It wasn't I was shit. It just takes a long time to establish. And it wasn't conducive to meeting very good people, meaning, I don't know. Real estate agents are predominantly cockheads. No. And then I had a long-term relationship that broke up. Financially, I was doing really badly. Emotionally, when you have a partner that leaves you essentially for somebody else, that makes you even feel worse about yourself. I hadn't dealt with a lot of stuff where family had died, and everything was just south. No support, no nothing, had nothing, could barely pay my bills. And I just, and I'm in my early 40s.
Mm.
And you talk about not having your shit together when you're in your 20s. Try, or essentially almost being homeless in your 40s and just not knowing what to do, or every decision you do is wrong. You just become so down on yourself. Yeah.
Mm. You mentioned earlier about there was some line around the amount of cocaine that you had in your life. Were you heavily using drugs back then, or was that way before then?
Way before that. If you are going through, look, no, somebody once said to me, and it's a very good, you never see at an award show, whether it's a TV award show or a business award show, you never see the winner of the award or the excellence get up and go, look, I could have never have got here if it wasn't for drugs and alcohol. It's allowed me to stay up for days and get all the work done. It never happens. So it's not a positive thing. And predominantly when I've gone, when I had that bad moment, it was just my thoughts. Yeah.
For sure. I want to go back a little bit to when you were a bit younger. You mentioning you're Aussie, we can hear it in your voice, but you haven't spent much time here in terms of, you spent a lot of time here, but you spent a lot of time overseas.
Yeah.
Talk to me about when you first moved overseas, where you went, and let's go from there.
I grew up in a small town in central Queensland
called
Mara.
Mara.
Yeah, it's about 2 hours inland from Rockhampton. I say 2 hours when it's actually an hour, but back when I lived there, it was a dirt road to get to that town. Like it was a dirt road in and out. That's back when you used to have to put a couple extra spare tyres on the roof racks. And Dad, every time we would go into town, he'd be changing tyres. Like
Wow.
that's how remote it used to be. Now it's paved, which is kind of cool. What was the question?
When you moved overseas.
Oh, so I used to watch all those movies. Like we used to live our life through movies, and back then we didn't even have Blockbuster. We had a video van that used to come in the driveway from another town. Our town wasn't even big enough to have a video store. This van used to pull up and used to slide it open and then see all the movies. So I used to see all these movies from America, and that's, when you're sitting in 45-degree heat for 9 months of the year, it's like, fuck, I just want to get out of the heat and experience cold. So when I was 18 and saved up enough money, I just grabbed a ticket and flew overseas. And I said to Mum I was going to be gone for 6 weeks and end up being gone for almost 2 years.
And you went to America or just?
Went to America. And then I had a work visa to go up into Canada, and I went over to England. So I sort of stayed in America a little while, went over to England, did a little bit of work there, and then I came back to Canada and started working in Canada when I was 19.
Mm. And were your mum and dad together?
Yeah, mum and dad were together from the time. Mum was very young when she had me. I think she was 16 when she had me. So me and mum essentially grew up together.
Wow.
Yeah. So so it's kind of weird to think, when I was 18 and I left, Mum was in her early 30s and she was pissed off that I was leaving. So, me and Mum essentially grew up together.
Wow. And so you went away for 2 years and came back?
Came back for a couple of years. I actually had met a girl in Canada, came back to Australia, and she followed me back. We actually got married when I was here.
In those 2 years?
In those 2 years, but I never told we had to get married for me to move to Canada. Now we were boyfriend and girlfriend, but we would have liked to we didn't want to get married at that young, but she wanted to go back because her parents were quite old and that was the only way I could come with her. So we got married, and I never told my folks for 2 years.
That you got married?
Yeah, in Nambour on the Sunshine Coast.
Right. So you got married and then you went back to Canada.
Went back to Canada, yeah. And then I stayed there till I was in my early 40s.
Wow. So you mentioned you close with your mum, you grew up with your mum, and then you mentioned just earlier about how you had no one here when you're at your lowest. Did moving away tarnish that relationship?
Well, Mum died. Mum passed away in 2007. My brother passed away the same year. He committed suicide. I was in prison. Just everything sort of drifted apart and drifted away. I was very close to my grandparents. They passed away. And so by the time I moved back here in 2014, life had changed. People move on. And Queensland had a lot of memories for me, not good memories of, they were very happy memories. But so when I sat at the airport in Sydney, when I came back to Australia, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to call or where to go. I sat there at the airport for 7 hours just trying to figure it out. And I was 41. I had 7 bags with me and nowhere to go. It's fucking daunting. I end up hiring a Ford Falcon from the airport and getting a SIM card and just sitting there just trying to figure out where to go or what to do. And I end up driving somewhere down near Canberra and renting a motel room that night and just waking up the next morning thinking I'm in a fucking nightmare. Because all my friends, the life I had was over, like in the blink of an eye. And I had to create a new one. It's shock. And you're not in your 20s, you're in your 40s. And it's, over those next 6 months, I lived in a backpackers in Sydney. I worked at a concrete crushing recycling plant. You know, I came from owning a couple businesses in Canada and having friends and family and boats and all this, and it was all taken away. Not taken away. It was, look, I did something wrong, and it was all gone. It's not like I could go, oh shit, I made a mistake. I just want to go home now. I couldn't do it. I had to just figure it out here. Even the job I had over there, you needed tickets, and Australia is very regulated with licenses and tickets. You need a fucking ticket to operate a chainsaw here, you know. And I had no tickets here. Didn't have a driver's license, so yeah. And I'm in my early 40s. Yeah.
Jeez. And so when you're in Canberra and you just go, fuck, this is a nightmare.
I woke up in the morning and just, yeah, I didn't know what to do, where to go. I was in shock the next day, and it wasn't that Australia's a bad country. It's just this wasn't a part of my plan. So did I have it figured out? Absolutely not. That was a very daunting time over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
A really daunting time.
And you mentioned while you're in prison, which we'll get to in a bit, you mentioned your mum and your brother passed away while you were in prison.
Yeah.
Did you know, was your mum sick? Did you know she was, were you in touch with her at the time? Or?
So how it worked out is I got a call from somebody that mum was sick and I needed to fly. Mum was dying. That was the call. It's about 3 a.m. and I went, I just didn't sound right. I talked to her the day before. She was fine. But she had a brain aneurysm. Look, she'd had cancer, but she'd sort of, I thought, beaten it. And she had chemo and everything was fine. And this was 2 years later. So I was in a bit of shock. So I flew home.
So you weren't in prison at the time?
I wasn't in prison. I flew home. But I was doing some bad shit in the sense I was flying weed from Canada into the US with a helicopter. And I wasn't a helicopter pilot.
You weren't a helicopter pilot?
No, I just taught myself. And so when I flew back, the US already had warrants out for me, which is fair enough. And I got home, I went to the hospital, my brother took me there and mum was sick and I said to him, I stayed about a week, she started getting better, I moved to a hospital and then I was getting a lot of pressure from overseas and I knew that I had to sort of wrap my life up a little bit and I wanted to come back to help my brother and dad sort of get through. I'd only planned to be here a couple of weeks. You know, it's just a weird time. You think you can fix it. And I said to Dad, I'm just going to duck back to Canada for 3 days. I've got to pack essentially my life up and I'll come back and I'll stay for 6 months and we'll get through this, whether we get mum better or whether I didn't say the other alternative, but I'll be back. I never did. And when I arrived to change planes in LA, I was arrested straight off that flight and then thrown into another new adventure, which was federal prison. And the next time I got back to Australia, my brother phoned me about 3 weeks later. He found me I think I was in Colorado, maybe New Mexico at some prison, at some FDX center. And I remember coming up Smith to the warden's office. So I got picked up and went up there and it was my brother on the phone and I know why he was calling, but he didn't say, he goes, how you doing? I said, yeah, I'm good, man. He goes, look, we're worried about you. I said, don't be worried. How's mum doing? And he goes, no, she's good, but she'd actually died 3 weeks earlier, but he never told me. He just said, get through this. Don't let anyone mess with you. I'll be there when you get out. And he killed himself. Yeah, a while later. Yeah.
Wow. So a little trip. You knew something was going down though, obviously, when you went back to Canada for 3 days because you knew there was people looking for you and stuff.
I didn't, my mind was mostly messed up a little bit. I didn't know there was warrants out for me in the US. And that's why I just pass through. Look, you're a complete idiot when you get into organised, when you get into that sort of a world, or, you justify it in certain ways in your head. It's just marijuana, I'm just not doing very, very much, or I never want to put pills or powder. It's just a plant that grows from that. It's illegal. No matter how you cut the mustard, no matter what you think about laws and stuff, it's illegal.
It's crazy what your mind does, hey, just to justify things.
Oh, you're a fuckwit, and a lot of people that get into that life, whether it's that or get into. Look, we all make mistakes. Was I young? I wasn't that young, but none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. I wasn't perfect back then. I'm not perfect now, but I do learn. I hopefully can pass. From that experience, I had an old boss call me up, and his son was getting into that sort of a world, and he said, "Can you come and have a chat to him?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I went and talked to him, and I said, "Look, I know what you're doing, and you think you're pretty smart, but I had a multi-million-dollar operation, and I was fucked from the start. So if you think you're that smart, you actually aren't. They're onto you already. They're smarter than you are, and you're dumber than you think. So couple that all together. There's only two ways out of this: prison or dead, and nothing good comes of it. Look, weed's legal now, and everyone's got their own thoughts on it. That's great, but the law is the law.
So you didn't have any bail or anything as soon as you got there, straight into prison? Was no,
because you're international. You're international. There's no bail or anything. You're going to fight your case now, and there's no fighting the case. I never planned on fighting the case. I did it. It's just negotiation for time then. And that's all it is. And the US, look, they're good. They'll throw a bunch. The first day that I stood up in court, I remember the judge reading out. I think he had 36 charges or 36 counts, and then he said, "You're looking at a minimum mandatory of 83 years with a maximum of 127." I remember those figures, and I just thought, I'm going to be 100 by the time I get out. And I just remember sitting down, and I still remember my lawyer going, "You got to stand up." And I said, "My legs don't work." And he goes, "No, they're just trying to scare you." And I said, "Mission accomplished. I am now scared." And he goes, No, it's all right. It's all right. Because they deal with it all the time. So I understand they stack the charges, then start taking them down as you as time goes on. But that initial arraignment is to put fear into you, and you don't know what fear is until they say that you're never going to get out. Because there was another young guy who was 23, who was a helicopter pilot, and he went to his arraignment. He was actually up in North Washington. He went to his arraignment, heard the same thing as I heard, and he went back to his cell and hung himself that night. So the fear is real. It's one of the scariest things you'll ever hear. And we all deal with it differently. I make no mistake, I was shit scared.
So you mentioned before the podcast that prison's not a physical game, it's a mental game.
Yeah.
It's just a mind game.
Yeah.
Was there times in prison where it was really, really bad and tested? Was one of those when you found out your brother killed himself?
I didn't find out my brother killed himself till after I got out. The hardest time was when I found out Mum was dead. My dad wasn't the best at he wasn't an emotional guy. And I got a letter about 9 months later from, I never talked on the phone to my brother or dad. I only wrote letters because at that stage I thought I could be doing the next 10 to 20 years. And I thought if I'm doing 20 years, I just need to change my mind and start accepting it and not wondering what everyone's doing outside. I've got to live my life inside. And that's how I dealt with it. And everyone deals with it differently. But Dad wrote me a letter and he didn't say, I've got some really bad news for you, or try and ease into it. It was on the second page, one paragraph down. He said, your mum's estate has been hard to deal with. And that was the first time that I found out Mum was dead. And it wasn't like your mum's dead, your mum passed away on this date, your mum did, like it was just your mum's estate's been hard to deal with. I'm like, holy fuck, Mum's dead. And then I just bawled and there was about 120 guys in my pod at the time. And it doesn't matter whether you were the national president for the Nazi lowriders or the president of the Hells Angels. Everyone came in, gave me a hug and just said, hardest time you'll ever do. So it's everyone's biggest fear is to lose their mum while they're in jail because your mum is a very special attachment. Yeah.
Did you ever speak to your mum at all when you were in jail?
By then she was already in a coma. Like when I came back, she was already sort of in a semi-coma, so she wasn't talking. Yeah. She didn't know I went to jail.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You mentioned about...
She would have kicked my ass.
Yeah.
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 Mum wouldn't have been happy. She would have kicked my ass.
Yeah. Taught you a lesson.
100%. Yeah.
Let's go to that lesson then because you mentioned you got in, you've been talking about flying planes across the border with marijuana. What was the thing you were doing? What did you get caught doing?
I got caught for smuggling. And it comes back to that school thing, by the way. Like, it comes back to that little town and that fucking classroom and Mr. Gurkey. And if you're listening, you're a fucking asshole. But it was, I always wanted to be a pilot. And I never thought I had the brains for it, but I always thought I had the aptitude for it. And I remember 15, I wrote to the Air Force and said, could I be a pilot? And I'll send you my grades. And they sent me back a letter saying, based on your school, your school, you could be a postman or a cleaner. So I couldn't even put air in the tires. And
at 15, you sent that?
Yeah, at 15, I sent that.
So you've always wanted to be a pilot?
I've always wanted to, I took a flight. The first time I ever got in a helicopter was at SeaWorld. I caught the bus down and I took one of those helicopter flights and it was a 206 Jet Ranger and he actually sat me in the front seat and I just thought this was the most amazing thing. And 15 years later, I was flying that exact helicopter with no license, just with my abilities. Yeah.
And a whole lot of drugs in the back of it.
A whole lot of weed in the back. Yeah.
So what got you into that?
Just a dumb conversation one night. I was working in a nightclub.
You're just working in a nightclub in Canada?
I was bartending in a nightclub, and the nightclub predominantly had gangsters from Vancouver. And over the years, I got to know them. I was just a bartender. And one night we're just sitting around, and I think I took a couple lessons in an ultralight. It's what I could afford, and one of them said, "Oh, do you think you could fly a helicopter?" And I've done this my whole life. When I got into the mines, my grandfather said, "Tell them you can drive a truck." And I'd never driven a truck in my life. And I just remember going into that interview at the Coal and Cattle, and the guy said, "What can you do?" And I said, "I can drive a truck." And he goes, "Okay, you're a truck driver." And then my first night, I'm driving one of those 150-ton Komatsu rear dumps. I'm just like, what the fuck have I done? and on my night shift. So as I've got a truck coming towards me, you got to think they're about 20 feet wide, and I've got a light here. I just remember running off the road, hoping to give enough room for the other truck to pass. So my grandfather always instilled, just say you can do it and you'll figure it out later.
Build the plane on the way down.
Right. I got a job as a bartender in Vancouver and I just made up a fake resume. I just went bartender at this place in Australia, and I got a job as a bartender. And I just remember the first drink and the guy said, "I want could I get a brown cow?" And I'm like, what the fuck is a brown cow? And this is before the iPhone came out. So I just said to the guy, "Look, we mostly make it different in Australia. How do you make it here?" And he goes, "It's Kahlua and milk." And I went, okay. So Next was pina colada. It was like, can nobody just have a rum and coke? Like, does everyone got to order a fucking cocktail? So I've always had that attitude, like just say yes and figure it out later.
Has that been a superpower for you? Or has it been a blessing and a curse, or what?
It's led me to.
Because so many people are scared to ever do anything they don't think they're going to master. And I think it's a limiting belief for a lot of people where they go, I can't do that. I'm not going to even go near it. But I feel like you're the complete opposite side of that spectrum where you've gone, I don't know any fucking thing, but I'm just going to say I do. You say it's not lying. It's just, I call it fake it till I make it. Is that what you say?
Totally. Why? Look, some of the greatest minds or greatest people have stumbled into what they actually do today. Educating yourself in the traditional sense, just go back to that one little saying. Instead of saying, "Oh, why not? What's the worst that could happen?" Well, that was a really fucking bad thing. But what's the what's the
worst that could happen? End up in jail.
Yeah, that one was pretty bad. That one wasn't good. I won't lie to you. That one wasn't great. That one I should have put a little more thought into. Going on Married at First Sight, as I'm signing the legal parts, it's like, have you had a what's the worst that could happen? Fuck it. Tick away. They'll love me. They'll overlook this. It'll all be good. I got a lot to give. But in the other sense, bartending, making the wrong drink, why not?
I did the same thing with bartending. Never ever made a drink in my life. Remember pouring like the vodka into the nip, just like shaking.
Yeah, totally. How nervous are you to pour that first thing? And it's like, is that enough? Did I spill some? 2 weeks later, you're just free pouring everything, and you think you're Tom Cruise as you're flicking bottles.
You know what's crazy though is what's the best way we learn? By doing
it.
So like, especially things like bartending, not like flying a plane, but like bartending and all of these other sort of skill sets. Within the first 2 shifts that you do, you will be better at bartending by just doing 2 shifts and being so shit at it and having a massive line and you're like waiting to pour all these beers because you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And doing all this head on a beer like this much because you're just learning it. 2 shifts, you'll be better off than sitting there for 3 weeks learning it theoretically. And that's the same with most things in life.
100%.
I think one of my mentors, he's the CEO of Forbes Australia. He says that 1 month working in a business, in like a startup business, is equivalent to 12 months of studying at an absolute minimum. And so if you compound that, right, and you do 3 months of strategic, hard, in the weeds work in a business, is more business, you'll get more business knowledge than 3 years of studying the thing.
Yeah.
So if you want to fast track anything you're doing in your life, actually do it. Don't just think about doing the thing. Don't just learn about doing the thing and studying doing the thing. Actually do the thing and you will start to learn and get way better at that thing.
Totally. Go pick up a helicopter, buddy. Just jump in and turn the key. There is no key. You will figure it out. When those blades are doing 560 revolutions per minute, the back one's doing 2,500, and you look down, you'll learn real quick.
How? Go to that moment. How do you figure out how? Because like there's a lot going on.
I did I did take a couple of lessons, but I'd never flown solo. I'd never started a helicopter by myself. There's a whole procedure when starting a jet engine. I'd always had somebody there, and so the day that I went and picked that helicopter up, I was going to hire a pilot, but when I got up there, it was all ready to go, and I didn't want to tell the guy I'm not a helicopter pilot.
Oh, the gangsters already had all the pilot.
They already had the helicopter. I was going to hire a pilot to pick it up to take it to where we needed to take it to, but and the company that we bought it off, which was Blackcomb Helicopters, already had it all ready. So
Wait, Blackcomb Helicopters.
in Canada,
Oh, you bought the helicopter
I bought
off
the helicopter off them, and they had to do some checks before it was ready to be picked up, and then it was ready to be picked up. And when I picked it up off the broker I bought it from, I didn't want to tell him that I wasn't a helicopter. But the whole time I talked like I was a pilot. And so he goes, hey, it's ready to go. And then I said, fuck it. and just jumped in and threw my bag on the back, because that's what I always seen pilots had a bag at the airport. So then I just got my gym bag and just, yeah, all good, man. I'll grab it now. And then just threw my bag on the back seat of the Jet Ranger and just sat there and just went, right, what do I do? And yeah, just remembered little things. I'd watched some videos on, and I just going through the stuff. I almost killed myself on that first flight, but what I don't say is when I took off and started spiraling up, is I looked up. I just, you will see pilots that touch the gauges, and I forgot that thing. And there was the last gauge to the right is actually your fuel gauge. I'd already flown up. I'd already taken off, and I'm sort of looking, and I'd gone through what's sort of translation. So I'm gaining some altitude, and then I'm just looking at everything, all the temperatures right, and I look down at the fuel gauge, and it read empty. And I've gone, holy fucking shit, I've got no fuel. And then I've just looked up here, and the two breakers for the fuel in a Jet Ranger up near your head, and both of them are down, and that's where you've got to run your hand down everything. And I've flicked those on, and the fuel's bounced up to full. But it's lucky on a Jet Ranger, it's a triple system, but I didn't. The only thing that could have killed me was that, and I didn't do it. So I should have died on the first flight.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And so what was the mission?
The mission was to go over into a river and pick up 175 pounds of weed in 2 bags, and then fly it south. Yeah.
How big are those bags? Did it fill the whole helicopter? Or?
No, the chopper could hold about 400 pounds. So 175 is just a bag, two and a half bags on the back seat.
Okay, and so flight over the border to America.
Yeah, so the first flight, I thought the flight was going to be, I hadn't actually driven down there. We just had a ground crew down there that gave me coordinates. I didn't know how to work the big GPS thing on the helicopter, so I just bought a fishing one and just put it on my leg, and then I just told my mate with me to match the numbers up.
Was he in the plane with you?
I had a mate that was unloading and loading. Yeah.
Right.
And so we went through some wind that I was over some power lines heading down through the mountains. I hadn't actually checked out the landing spot before because I didn't want to fly this helicopter any more than I had to, because I had no fucking idea how to do it. So the littlest time I could spend in the chopper, and the first couple of times, because any time I got in there was a chance I was going to die. So I didn't want to spend it. And as I got better at it, I used to just take dates on it. But anyway, we'll get into that. So flying south, hit some wind that absolutely, I just remember fighting the stick. I'm pulling up on the collective, but it seems to be pushing me down. I had no clue about weather or wind or anything, but I just knew I had to keep this thing up and straight. And then as I got about 80 miles south, I just remember sort of looking over at my friend, and he just looked stressed. And,
to be expected. Right?
And I'm like, something's not adding up here. And I've looked at him going, what's wrong? And he goes, I had the GPS upside down. We got to go 20 miles back the other way. I said, back through the fucking wind we just came through? He's like, yeah, sorry, dude. I'm taking us to the wrong spot. So then...
It was the fishing GPS.
Yeah, helicopter, big loop, and then back through that wind. And I just gone, oh, shit. So we did our first drop. As I'm coming in through the trees, I remember I'm not going to say his name. He never got caught. He took his headset off, and on the Jet Ranger, it's got this post here, and he put his headset on my hook, which took out my vision for that side for the blades, and I couldn't see the trees then, and I'm coming in trying to look at trees, and I just remember grabbing these and throwing them at him, going, "I'm coming into land, my first landing, and you're basically going, oh, just do this." And we were just stressed, dropped on the ground, bags were out in 10 seconds. I sort of pulled the helicopter up and away we went. And then all the way home, we were singing Sweet Home Alabama. We were just, it was euphoric.
So how much did you get paid for this first drop that you did?
I can't remember. I think it was about $500 per. I think I mostly made 40,000. Maybe something like that, 50,000. It wasn't a full load, and we got paid in $20 bills. And one size 10 shoebox holds about 20,000 in 20s. So I don't know, 2.5 shoeboxes.
You used to count them in shoeboxes.
He's just always got paid in shoeboxes of money.
They'd give you shoeboxes
because it was always paid in 20s. So it was a lot of. It's a lot of cash, and it's hard to get rid of. It's really funny when you go into that world. Like if you want to be paid in hundreds, you'll be docked about 20%.
Why?
Because hundreds are easier to spend than 20s, and you won't ever get paid in fives. Like it'll never be a breakdown of fives. If you want to be paid in 50s, you'll get docked about 10% if you don't want 20s. And if you want 20s, you'll just get whatever you were paid. But
that was just how it worked in that world. So like if you wanted bigger notes, then
if you wanted bigger notes, you had to take a
pay cut.
Yeah, you had to take a pay cut of like 20% for bigger notes.
Why? Because is it harder for them to get bigger notes?
It's hard to get bigger notes. It comes down to the end person. Like when you're picking up a $20 bag of weed, you're going to pay your dealer in 20s, and then he's going to pay his guy, and then he's going to pay his guy, and all this money just floats sort of up the line to. It wasn't my weed. I was just the helicopter pilot.
the not helicopter pilot.
The helicopter. The weird thing is, I actually had a big kingpin on there once, and I thought I was going to die with him on board. I actually thought he jumped out once.
What's a kingpin?
Well, he was one of the guys that arranged it. I don't remember his name. He's Mendez or whatever. I met him one or two times, and I flew him once.
He get caught?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He got caught. He was the one that got me caught. But I was flying across the mountains, and I heard the door open in the back seat, and I'm like, holy fucking shit. I looked at my mate and said, I think that guy just jumped out. We were at 2,000 feet up. I'm like, how am I going to explain this to people? Did
he jump out?
I looked around because in a 206, you're really strapped in there tight. So I unloosened my seatbelt. And he couldn't look, so I'm unloosening my seatbelt, trying to fly with my knee, and looked around to see him laughing. He just sort of pulled a prank on us, and my heart just stopped there for a minute. Yeah.
So how many runs did you do, and was it getting to a stage where it was full planes?
Yeah,
400 pounds of.
It was getting a lot. It was getting flying every day, every second day. It was a lot of, and I got very good at flying. I won't lie to you. I'm not a bad pilot. I'm not a pilot, but I got good at flying. I actually didn't want to do it anymore. I don't know. For me, it brought back to that kid thing. It brought back to that kid that stood in the corner of that classroom, that I just wanted to prove, not to the world, I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. I don't think I could ever be an Air Force pilot because I don't have the, I couldn't do. You need a 4-year degree. You need a lot of education to do that, and I'm not that smart. But it was just a dumb thing. I proved to myself that I wasn't that kid that was dumb in the corner. That, yeah. It was really weird. I didn't want to do what I was doing, but
Right.
yeah.
So you're making all this money and illegally in cash, and you're living this life, and you're in Canada at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like,
It was all gone. Like when I jumped on that plane when Mum died, when Mum was sick, I had that money in that apartment, and I never went back to that apartment.
oh, really?
Yeah.
So you just had an apartment filled with cash.
Yeah, there was lots of money there, and there was lots of everything there. There was lots of money there, and when I was arrested in LA, I never went back to that apartment. So everything I'd had, or where there was no secret stash. It was flash cash. It was all gone.
Right. So that'll literally, obviously it changed your life.
Yeah.
Like you had this big rise, and did it all happen really quick? Like how long were you doing all this for?
I was only involved in that world for 3 to 4 months. That was it.
3 to 4 months.
Months.
So you went from being a bartender
to an international drug smuggler to prison. That's how quick it was. And that's what I'll say is the smallest decisions can affect you for the rest of your life. Because that decision that I did for 3 months, it's the Gwyneth Paltrow movie, Sliding Doors. That sliding door slid, I walked through it, and then it slid shut. And then that sent me on another path, because the original ground crew were already hot. They were already under investigation. They were about to tie up the investigation when they seen me. They wanted to see where this led, which led into the helicopter, which led into everything like that. There were a bunch of warning signs not to do this, Tim. There was an article in Playboy. There was a lot of buzz around helicopters and drug smuggling in the north. Somebody had done a fucking interview. Like there was a ton of things telling me not to do it, but I did, and it was so quick that time. But again, 20 years later, it still affects me. Like there's still repercussions, because that led into me being deported from Canada. That led into me getting back to Australia. That led into me having to do a Channel 9 interview with Current Affair, because people were saying they were gonna put it out on social media that I had a criminal past. So this small part of my life I paid for on numerous occasions. I'm glad now that people know, one, not to do it, that the smallest decision can affect you for the rest of your life, and it has. We joke around and talk about filling out the application for Married at First Sight, but I mean the stress that I was under, like it's like how many times do I got to admit to doing this? I'm not the same person I was back then, but if I had have written, there's opportunities I've missed out because of it, because I was too afraid to, what if it ever came out? Now, fuck it.
Do you have any regret?
Oh, I regret that like you wouldn't believe. It was one of the worst decisions I've ever made, if not the worst decision I've ever made in my life. It's a two-pronged, but it's my life. It's a two-pronged thing, because everything you do today makes you the person that you are. If we change, we only ever see it on a movie, but if we ever change one thing in our life, whether we do walk through that door or not, does it affect where you are today or the person that you are? And if I say I'd take that out, I don't know, what's it change? You can't live like that, because I've often said I could have saved my brother. And it's a torture. I torture myself, because I often talk to him like he's still here. I went and seen his grave last weekend, and I had a bit of a chat with him. And it's just like, if I wasn't in prison and you were going through that time, I could have picked it. I could have saved you. Because my lawyer actually came to me, and this is one of the fucking huge regrets I'll always have. My lawyer came to me, would have been late November, said, your brother wants to come and see you. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And I said, look, I'm going to get out at some point. I'm not sure when, but it's not going to be a long sentence. And I just thought of the cost. I thought it's going to be 10 grand for him to fly over to the States. I'm only allowed a 1 hour visit. I'm in Supermax. It's not like we're just going to be sitting there opposite, in glass. And then he's going to have to go away. You can only get visits on Saturday. He's got to get approved. I said it's going to cost him like $10,000 or $15,000 to come over here to sit. If he sat over here for 2 or 3 weeks, he's going to get to see me for 3 hours, 1 hour each week, on a Saturday. And I said, I just don't want to put him through all of that. I look like shit, and it could be emotional for him, and I just don't want to put him under that stress. He killed himself 3 weeks later. He wasn't coming over to check on me. He needed me to check on him. It's that's the burden that I've got to carry, that he needed me. But I just didn't think of it like that.
And does that still come up today?
Fuck yeah. Totally. Once every day. But that's a part of the crime. That's a part of the punishment. So you never get out you never get out of it clean. And that's a part of what makes me up today, is that empathy. Like, I have empathy. I have huge regrets, huge empathy, huge, I'm more forgiving of people. We all make mistakes, but really understand the consequences of them, because I wasn't there. And it's why I want to help people today, because I couldn't help the one person that I should have helped.
Is there any lessons you've learnt from that?
Oh, massive lessons. Again, the pebble in a pond, it's only a small pebble like that, and you throw it in there, but it'll travel, and the travel, that pebble in a pond, the traveling distance is time. So when you do something you don't think is going to catch up with you, it's time. Every couple of years, it'll rear its head and go, hey, remember this? You're doing a deal with the devil. You're doing a deal with the devil. And, I mention movies a lot, but it's almost, I can't even remember the name of the movie, but, you'll be traveling along in life, and then the devil pops up and he goes, remember you made a deal with me. I've been listening to Matthew Perry's book, Friends and the Big Bad Secret. Matthew Perry got down on his knees, and he said to God, and he said, just make me famous and you can do whatever you want with me. And that's when he got the job at Friends and changed his life. But he had this drug addiction. He had this addiction. And it's very similar. It's like, I'll give you everything you want, but you said you'd do this for me. The devil will come through. So I got to lead this ridiculously weird life for this time period. And I remember making deals all the time with whoever. I remember sitting there in the back of the courthouse in the scariest time, and I used to do this thing. I could swing my ankles and my ankle chains would swing. And I just remember talking to God or whoever and just saying, please get me out of this, and, I'll I'll do whatever. But there's always a price to pay.
Mm.
There's always a price to pay. There's a price to pay for just being a shitty person. There's a price to pay for breaking the law. And you'll never know what that price is. You don't know.
Mm. Do you think that, like, you said earlier that would I change any of it because I am who I am today? Like, you didn't really answer that. Like, would you change any of the shit that has happened to you?
I would change those flights. I would.
But if you look at that, though, you'd be in a completely different place in your life.
You would. It's life. We can't change. You know, it's a hypothetical question that you'd love to answer and love to say.
But I guess the reason I ask that is
It's an interesting question.
If you would change it, you'd be in a completely different spot.
Totally.
That's the first thing. The second thing is you can't change it. And so it's focusing on things that you can't control, which then means, like, because the where I'm trying to tie this into is the concept around regret.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there's a lot of regrets, and those are some of the big regrets. But if we recognize that we can't change the life that we have, and that's happened, we can't change it. Regretting something is regretting something that you've done that shaped you into who you are today. And so I feel like if you could look in the mirror and be proud of who looks back, you couldn't have regret, because those things are what has made you in which you were proud of. Would you say that's an interesting thing where, like, the regret is something where maybe there's a place you want to get to that you don't feel like you've got to yet, and until you get there, you're going to hang on to the regrets?
I guess when you break it down like that, and it's a really good question, when you break it down like that, the regret of flying, look, it was a dumb thing to do. It was illegal. It did shape who I was. The regret, when we just dug into that story a little bit about Dave, maybe I should have just said yes, tell him to come over, because he would have been over there at the time that he wanted, and he would have seen me and gone, fuck, at least I'm not where he is. You know, that would have been a positive thing, because I would have said, hey, where are you eating? What are you doing? But you are right. If you change any one thing, you're not in the spot you are today. We've all got to take responsibility a little bit for our actions, and I wish Dave had never done that. And I've been in that spot. I've been exactly where he is. I've stood on the back of a car. I've stood on that tow hitch with a rope and just gone, if I step off, all my problems are gone. But it leaves the burden on other people then. You know, people that find you, people that, you know, the traumatic thing of seeing somebody there, people have got to, you know. So the poor little bugger, you know, he was too sick, but essentially take responsibility, and he he paid the ultimate responsibility by taking his own life. And if I look at your question is, do I have regret? The regret of flying the helicopter, or the regret of not being there with Dave, you know, a bit of that is out, like not being there while I'm in jail. That's out of, you know, they weren't choices that I had. I just had to make the best out of a bad situation. I wish he had have stuck around and just fought for one more day, or fought for one more year, or did what he said he was going to do, which was pick me up off the plane. But the poor bugger couldn't.
What made you not step off? And when you look at that and you think about all the reasons that, you know, that you're just listing, like, what made you go no?
I've listened to a few different podcasts on that, and they always, you know, there's a young guy that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, and yeah, there's been something like 2,000 people jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, and only like 9 or 15 people, whatever, have survived that. It's like 27 stories up. And I remember hearing him on Larry King, and he said when his hands left the steel, he instantly regretted it. and gone, fuck, I don't want to die. And he said if he had have just stayed for 10 seconds and thought about the repercussions or 10 seconds, they always have this 10-second rule. Weirdly enough, and I don't know whether I fucking believe it or I don't, but this woman had me in tears, and my friend bought me this psychic reading. And look, whether you believe it or not, I didn't say anything because I got angry at him asking, have you told her anything about my life? And this was right after I got out and didn't. And we went in the room and she was reading. She goes, look, I there's somebody here. I feel it's, very close to you, possibly a brother. And I've sort of gone, whoa. And she didn't know he committed suicide. She didn't know he hung himself. And, she started getting into it. And she said, look, when he stepped off the chair, he tried to get back to the chair. He went the minute he stepped off. And she was telling me, this is what he's telling me. He goes, fuck, big fella. And he called me big fella. He goes, fuck, I regretted it. I tried to get my foot back on the chair, but I couldn't reach it. But I'm okay. I'm here. I want you to know I'm okay. I tried to get back, but I couldn't. And he said, if I had have just given it a few seconds, I wouldn't have done it. And that's always stuck with me. Like when you're standing on the edge of darkness, just give it 10 seconds because each second will feel like a lifetime. Like it will click through so slow. Your memories will it's a real weird feeling when you're standing there. Your memories will just go back to childhood, back to this person. Like it's almost like one of those movies where all your receptors in your brain are just shooting off and it's like this. I remember, that train cake I got when I was 6 and then bang. I remember when I was with this girl and then bang, then you're back to a child. You're back when I was racing BMX and all this is going through your head. And it's only been 4 seconds. And then you're like, fuck, who's going to find me? Who's going to find my body? Like, and then you're like, I can't fuck somebody's life up.
Wow. And then you're still here today. When I had CJ Bloomfield on a couple of weeks ago, the guy I was telling you just off air before we started recording, he tried to take his own life multiple times, and when he made it out the other side, he went through a lot of healing and a bit of a spiritual journey, and unpacked himself a lot. And he said that the wanting to kill himself was the first step to healing for him, because he realized that it wasn't him that needed to die; it was a large part of him that needed to die, not him, but a lot of the way he was living, a lot of the different things that he was doing, a lot of the beliefs that he had, like all of that needed to die in order for him to free up some space to let all the other new stuff in.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting take on suicide because, I speak to people all the time with different challenges with that and meeting that person, and they all have different insights, which is really powerful. But I really appreciate you sharing that though.
Yeah. Mate, that's very interesting. That's very interesting what you just said. Yeah. That's an interesting, I completely agree with him. And it's never been put that way, but I completely agree with him. Yeah.
I feel like it's because I'm blessed that I've never been in that position, but I feel like when you get out on the other side of that and you don't have the suicidal thoughts, do you think that there's something that happens in your life, or do you get this level of confidence, or how do you get out of the other side of that where you go, do you get little wins on the board, or like a little lick of the ice cream where you go, yeah, I want the rest of it, or you have something to drive towards, or what's the thing that keeps you going after that moment?
You just want the smallest thing. Like life's enough pressure as it is. I mean, we're more lonely than we've ever been. With social media and everything today, we're more lonely than we've ever been. People are lonely. People wonder why they're on this planet. People, people don't own a house or can't afford it or whatever. Everyone's judging everyone. Everyone thinks there's a lot of pressure in today's world. It's just what made me feel better, just paying my bills. It was a really weird thing. I had no money in the bank back then. I just sort of got no money, got nothing. And then I didn't do it that night. And then I got some help with the Alfred, and I started just cooking a meal, and I started eating. Oh, and one of the counselors said, go get a dog. I've always been a big dog fan, love dogs. I had my dogs in Canada. I had to leave them there. With my ex-wife, but she said she'd let them see out their days there. And she was great with them. We shared them for 10 years. But I went and got a dog about 2 weeks later. I got Cookie. And, mate, that just gave me a reason. Because I'm 50. I don't have kids. Well, back then I was 45, no kids. So I ended up getting a dog. I've got 2 of them now. And it just gave me that reason to get up in the morning, and things just started to get a little bit better. And I wouldn't say, it's not like you had this wow moment, but you started appreciating the little things. I sold a house, so I made enough money for me not to, worry about the bills for the next 3 or 4 months. Yeah, you don't need a lot to be happy. You don't. And I don't, and people don't. But there was no aha moment. There was just a moment that I cared about something, which is I had a pet. I started doing okay at work, and it all just seemed to just one day at a time. There's no holy shit, my life's changed. It's one day at a time.
It reminds me of this quote from an amazing book. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's this story around a boy and a horse, and they're in the woods, and the boy goes to the horse, I can't see a way out. And then the horse goes, but can you see your next step? And the boy goes, yes. And the horse goes, well, just take that. And it's a great lesson for everything that you're doing in life, because we look at where we're trying to be and we don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And we're an overthinker, and there's all these different things coming into our mind, and we have no idea how we're going to get there. We want to get there, but we're lost.
Yeah.
But if we just look down and take the next step, and then one step, play matches, win matches, take another step, and just keep moving forward, we will get our way there. And I think it is a powerful lesson to remind ourselves when we are overthinking and we are really lost.
Theo Vaughn, actually, I like. Do you like Theo Vaughn? I mean, Theo Vaughn, he's a good guy for advice. Like, he's got some really powerful things, and he said the other day, he said, if you don't try, I can guarantee you one thing: you won't ever make it. You won't ever be. And he said, if you do try, I can't guarantee that you'll get to where you want to go, but I guarantee you'll be in a different place than you are today. So there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that if you try, and I'm not talking about success, I'm just talking about life in general, to be happy. Just be happy. Don't worry about the money, fucking cars, bullshit. Just be happy. If you don't do anything today, I can guarantee you, if you stop trying to be happy, you won't ever be happy. But if you at least try, I can't guarantee that you'll be happy, but I'll guarantee, I can't guarantee that you won't be happy, but you'll be you'll be in a different place.
And I also think happiness shouldn't be the goal, because as you said at the very start of the podcast, we need to have the ups and downs. The bad is a cost for the good, and you need to have both of those. You were talking about about not progressing at all, like not even trying. And I did a poll on my Instagram a while ago about what are people's biggest fears, and the most common fear was the fear of failure. They say, I don't want to try, do things because I'm scared of failing. And I thought about it, and it's actually not the fear of failure. It's what other people are going to think of you if you fail. Because if you're in a video game and you're playing it by yourself and you die, do you really care? You get a little bit annoyed. You might smack the controller, but then you get on, you play again, you respawn.
Yeah.
Because no one's watching. But as soon as someone's watching, that's where you get scared. But then you get thinking about it a little bit further and you go, well, if your biggest fear is failure and you are not willing to try, do anything, you will never get anywhere in your life. But the fear of what other people are going to think of you is one thing, but what's a way worse fear is the fear of doing absolutely nothing in your life.
Oh,
It's like when you don't try, you guarantee that you will fail.
Yeah. 100%.
So that's the ultimate failure.
Yeah.
And then also the next thing is the only people that are complaining about you the only people that are worried about you failing are probably people below you and people that haven't actually given things a crack themselves anyway.
It's funny you'd say that because I was in my hometown last weekend and I got talking to some guys that put on my brother's funeral. I'd never met them because my brother's friends actually put his funeral on. It's a whole fucking story. But I got talking to them and you know, people have looked at, oh, you know, we watch you, you're on, you know, you did this TV show, you did this, you did that. And then like they talk about, I said, oh, how long you worked at the mine? He said, oh, I've been there 26 years. One guy had done 49 and a half years and retired. One of my other mates, he's been there over 30 years. And I know that you can just sort of see it a little bit. There's regret. I said, have you ever wanted to do anything different? You know, it's just, it's what my life is. He goes, they're the golden handcuffs. You can never give it up. But unfortunately, they do have that fear of the unknown, and it excites some people and it scares other people. But, you know, I can somewhat control the fear of the unknown.
You know what it is, though? They don't have the
it.
belief. They don't have the belief that they can escape it.
They can live. You're right. You even move into a new city. Do you realise how scary that is as you get older? I mean, you've just moved to Melbourne, but you realise how scary it is. I've got no friends. I don't know anyone here. Who do I talk to? What do I do? Where do I go? All these questions. And it does get harder as you get older. Your fear of changing your job. That's why, you know, people lose their job. You know, when you're in your 20s, like, fuck, I'll get another job. As you get older, you know, the fear, but it's no different.
Yeah, and it's just no belief that they can change. And I think being exposed to something can give you that belief as well. It's like, even take like social media following, for example, is you don't really have a belief that you can grow such a big audience. But then when you see one of your best mates grow a big audience, all of a sudden you have this belief that, oh, maybe I actually can do that. Because you've actually your peripherals have been exposed a little bit more, and you've been open to more opportunity. Especially in that small town culture, you're never exposed to other things. So it is what it is. A job at the mines is the pinnacle at this town. That's what you do, and that's your life.
There's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's a stress-free life to a degree because we don't get a do-over. So if you really want to do something, do it. And if you fail at it, it's okay. Because as you know, you're in your 20s. I'd give my left ball to be 20 again and know what I know. But unfortunately, you know, I'm in my 50s, but I do like Gary V. I've still got another 30 years to go. We're healthier. We live a healthier lifestyle now. I've just quit drinking. And there's so much to experience. I wouldn't say achieve. I'd say experience. I like to sort of go, hey, we're all trying to strive to be fucking millionaires or whatever. But there's so much to experience in life. But you got to take that first step. And the belief is no matter what happens, whether you're sleeping in your car, whether that job works out, whether moving down to Melbourne or moving to Sydney or living on the Gold Coast it's stepping outside your comfort zone.
Well, you can have different jobs, you can have different lives, you can have different foods and diets and training and hobbies, but something that never goes away is you and like your soul and yourself. And so when you're by yourself and your head hits the pillow at night and you're thinking, imagine if you're just thinking like, what if I did that? Well, I really wanted to do that. I always did. But whenever someone would ask me, I would never tell them because I was scared of telling them because I knew that I wasn't going to do it. I didn't have the belief I could do it. Imagine having those thoughts in your mind every night as opposed to going, fuck, I gave it a red hot crack. It failed. Oh, well. But
I love
gave
the
it a red
fail
hot
stories.
crack.
Any success, I'm not, but I love hearing about the war stories. The war stories are so much interesting, and that they often, you know, Michael Jordan got cut from his senior basketball team because he wasn't good enough. Got fucking cut from the team. You know, all these war stories about who succeeded and who's failed, or whether you made it or you didn't, or whether you hit a level of success. Look at the new vice president of the United, well, soon to be the new vice, you know, as a school teacher. You know, I just heard his speech last night. You know, at 42 years old, he was sitting at the kitchen table wondering how he's going to pay the bills. You know, 10 years later, he's going to be the vice president of the United States, you know, as a school teacher. You know, with 3 little kids and not making ends meet. He's going to be the most second powerful man in the world. You can do anything you want.
Mm.
Yeah, he started his political campaign. He said he didn't have 2 nickels to rub together.
Yeah.
So it's whether you're young or old or we can do anything today. And so I was talking to a young person the other day about social media. I'm 52. You know, I only started on social media. Oh, look, I've had my Facebook account. I had somebody else set it up many years ago. It's not like I did anything with it. I really only started on Instagram about a year and a half ago.
When you went on the show?
Just before the show, I went on it and I was posting a few things. But, you know, I wanted to. Social media is a new dog for a lot of people, whether it's young or old, and whether you get good at it. And I was talking to somebody the other day saying, just talk into the camera, and they go, I just can't talk into the camera. It's not natural for a lot of people to do. It's something whether you're young or old, you've got to learn to do. And this girl was 21. She's going, I feel weird. I said, don't worry, we all feel weird when you start something for the first time. You just gotta just break through that.
Yeah. And why'd you quit alcohol?
I've just recently quit alcohol because
For a period of time or
No,
indefinitely?
indefinitely. I've been listening to a lot of people I look up to, and as I've gotten older, it takes longer to get over than I went to my first event the other day. And I went to my first event and I wasn't drinking. It's really weird. I went up and said, can I just get a Coke? And she went to give it to me in a paper cup. And I'm like, fuck me. I'm looking around the room. Everyone's got champagne. I said, can you just put it in that fucking glass there? Do I have to walk around with a paper cup? And it's taking me longer to get over the hangover, like and I want to see what my brain is like without it. I'm a big fan of Theo Vaughn. I'm a big fan of a lot of comedians, Nikki Gleason, Bradley Cooper, a few other people like Bradley Cooper hasn't drunk alcohol in 21 years, and he said. And I'm not it's not I'm a big drinker. It hasn't enhanced my life. So I want to see what it's like to hit all receptors, to be present, to be everything, and go forward.
Yeah. I like that. I think when you say it hasn't enhanced my life in any way, that's a really powerful thing to note, because with every positive, there's negatives, right? And with every negative, there's positive. You just got to look for it. And when you look at something like alcohol, it's kind of like a negative sum game where there's nowhere near as much positive than negative with it.
Yeah.
You have a little bit of fun, right? When doing it, but then the come down of it, the suboptimal feeling you might have for days beyond, even weeks, because when you're fully off alcohol, you know how powerful the feeling is, and so it's like a negative sum game where it actually doesn't add up. It's
No, it doesn't, and I'm not into wine so much that you see those people that go to Napa or and their experience, and they can really pull apart the flavor of the wine and how it was made. And for them, it's a way of it's an interest, it's a way of life, and they really digress. It's like somebody that's into whiskey, and they really understand the makings of it. I have no issue with that. For me, it's just a social thing, and I actually have found that I'm more social, more bubbly when I'm not drinking, and I don't last as long on the night. Like, I'll lose interest in the night after, say, 2 or 3 hours. Where drinking, you may last 6 or 7 hours, where you're just talking shit, and then the next. But I'd rather be there for a shorter time. I hit the event, I talked to everyone, I had a great time, I was home in bed by 10:30. And then next day I woke up and I tend to find I'm getting a lot more done. I'm thinking clearer. It's only been, but I'm interested to see. I was never a big drinker when I was young. It's mostly been more in my 40s. And now I just think I personally need to have a clearer path in life.
Yeah, nice. We've spoken a lot, spoke about a bunch of different things and really, really unpacked your story. We noticed as I stayed clear from the show talking about it and really want to just like talk about what you were doing on, you were on Married at First Sight?
Married at First Sight,
yeah. And I guess it's an interesting one because I think when you build up all your hype on social media from a TV show, typically I feel like you'd go on a podcast and people are just going to talk about the show a lot of the times too, and a lot of different things. And I really thought there was a lot more interesting stuff for you instead of that.
Well, the funny thing is about the show is, I'm in the process of writing a book right now. I'm writing a book, and the show, for some people looking back, it's the most exciting thing that's ever happened, or the biggest thing that's ever happened. For me, it's just one of the things that's happened. And obviously when my story came out about the helicopters and all of that came out on a current affair, everyone was like, holy shit. And then Married at First Sight was sort of essentially pushed aside to this whole other life that I've led. And look, it's been exciting at certain parts, it's been heartbreaking at others, it's been devastating, it's been great. Yeah, I've lived a pretty colourful, full life from that little boy that stood in the corner, this is what stupid is. And I've got some other pretty amazing things that are happening or about to happen and it's not actually from the show itself, it's just from what's happened to me. Yeah.
So do you think the show has it kind of catapulted you to where you are today from where you were before that show though?
I've got a couple of I've got life coaches up on Andy and Maddie up there on the Gold Coast, and I was already going to start doing speaking. My story was we'd already had this sort of, I'd already started a couple gigs, and then I was about to go on some podcasts and just talk about, the small town boy that gets into helicopters. It plays out like a movie. I had a movie company approach me last year about making a movie, and I pulled out of it. I just wanted more control. I was sort of handing over too much control, so it's my life, so I put a hold on it. I was already going to, I was already off on this path, and so we'd booked. I was starting to do some speaking gigs, and then bang, married at first sight. Well, a few things happened. My dad passed away, and then I had to deal with that. And then right at that time, Married at First Sight also called about a month later and said, "Hey, do you want to do the show?" And I went, "Oh, fuck it, let's do it." So my path was heading here, and then I took a sort of a jolt here, and now the show's over. It was a great experience, had a great time, and now I'm off on the next adventure. But it was a great experience, but it doesn't make you who you are.
It maybe helped fast track a little bit of where you were trying to get to, but you kind of altered path and then steered back on path in a sense with where you're trying to go.
Yeah, that's all. It's given me a great platform to be open to people and people to be open to me. It's mostly fast tracked that because I've always said, I don't understand why when people walk down the street and you're looking at them, why people look down. I live on Chapel Street, and I always like saying hello to people. And I've said this before. I don't understand why I had to go on a TV show for people to be friendly. I was always friendly before the show. What? And don't even look at me. Just look at people in general. When you walk down the street, just say hello to somebody. Give somebody a compliment. I get compliments all the time now, but whether somebody looks nice, or I love your dog, or you look so happy, just say something nice. It doesn't have to be a person on TV.
You never know what they're going through, again, tying that back into that. But also, I understand as well when people don't, that when they're more bubbly and more inclined to say hello to someone that there's no online on social media and on TV and etc. Because there's something more unique, because not everyone can do that experience. And that kind of does poke your head out of the crowd a little bit. It's like you have an audience on social media. You've amassed an amount of people that are engaged in what you're
100%.
doing. You've got some level of status, and people, we're human. Like, it's normal for us to put that as a high value.
But you said something. I mean, that say you didn't have the TV background, but people are fascinated with people today. So if you're willing to let people into your life, they're willing to let you into theirs. And I mean, by you posting 2 videos, you're saying that changed your life by posting those 2 videos a day. I've met a young girl the other day that has had a hard time with friends and growing up. And as much as we bag online, there is a community as well. And I said to her, like, if you like somebody's content, shoot them a message, go, "Hey, I really like your content. Do you ever want to do a collaboration together?" Whether it's doing a video together, catching up, or whatever. I've never had anyone say piss off.
And even if they do, it's like,
who fucking cares? There's a
give it
million
a
people
shot.
out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I encourage people to do that too. I also recognize, though, that, and without getting in your head, but I recognize that there is a value exchange going on with everything that you're doing, and you can't expect to receive something from someone when you have nothing to give to. And so what that should do is encourage you to level up you and keep working on yourself as well. And I think don't get disheartened when someone doesn't, if it doesn't make sense.
Everyone's got something to give.
But is it everyone has something to give, but is it like at the same amount as what you're getting back?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it needs to be that way, because I really like to live in this approach of give, and not really expect anything in return.
Yeah.
Because then everyone will just feel that things will just come. Yeah. Everyone feels obliged to give off the back of that, right? And so that's kind of like how I would live. I don't think having expectation of return is a shit place to live, I think.
You can never
You're
give expecting something back. And I never have, whether it's time, effort, money. I just never have. I give 150%. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and look, I'll blow my own trumpet in this sense. I give with friendships or whatever. I'm the first person to give time, effort, whatever. And I don't expect anything back, but people will find their own level.
Mm.
If you're a good person, yeah, you attract other good people. People aren't there forever. And I used to get really hung up about friends, like, oh, they don't call, or I put so much effort in. And now I've discovered over the last few years, when I went through that really bad period and I met a bunch of people after I got out of that relationship 6-7 years ago, and I look at the friends that I had then, they're not the same friends I've got now. Not that they're bad people. We moved on. They stayed where they're at, and I moved on to where I'm at. I had this really close friend for 3 years, and we had a little falling out over something completely stupid. I tried to reach out, and I remember I tried to reach out a while ago, and I caught up coffee with her mum, and I was sad that we weren't friends, but she said, I always said to you, if you went on that TV show, I'd never be friends with you. And I just I laughed, finished my coffee, and thought, it says more about you than me. Like, my friends can do, I'll support them, no matter what. You go on the biggest asshole show you want, or make a dick of yourself online. I'll still support you, laugh at you, be it there, and whatever you need. Just people that are judgy. Just don't expect anything back from a friendship or from anything. And I'm like you, I just give. And if you're along for the ride, that's great. And if I turn around and you're not there anymore, I wish you well in whatever adventure you're in.
Mm. I appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's been awesome. Is there anything you've been thinking about recently, or before we wrap up, you've been thinking about that you'd want to share, or we've spoken about a lot? What are your thoughts? Anything you've been pondering on?
Yeah, it's just I want people to understand. Just be good to yourself and be good to other people. You never know what, and I keep saying this, you never know what somebody else is going through. So if you want to be a good person, just be good to others. Be cognizant of their time and what somebody else could be going through. Even if you're going through some shit right now, the best way is to be good to others. It's a weird concept. I mean, do you get this? And might be off camera. Do you get people messaging you a lot, and then sometimes when you don't get back to it, like I get some pretty deep messages, and if you're on the edge, I'll message you back. But then I've had a few messages lately that have not affected me, but it's like they said, you're not what you make out to be. I can't message everybody all the time. Like your time,
you know what it is though as well. It's not only a time thing; it's actually an energy thing too. Because for me, sometimes there'll be a message that I really want to respond to, but I'm not in a headspace to respond to that.
Okay, yeah.
And so I won't respond to it. And honestly, it's a time and place thing. And so there might be a time where I see a message and I'm in a good headspace and I want to respond to that. And I'll send them 8 minutes of voice messages of my thoughts.
Okay, yeah.
And I'll do that because I feel like it. But there might be another time that I receive a message or 2 or 10 or 100 and I'm glancing through them and I'm looking and I'm reading these messages, and there's certain ones that I feel called to answer and there's certain ones that I don't.
Yeah.
And you just catch me on a day or not. And what I had to do is remove my guilt and feeling bad for not responding to people and all of this and going, hey, I'm providing so much value here. I'm giving as much as I possibly can on social media. This is that next step further, and I'm going to do my best to give as much as I can without taking from me, because the ability to have the energy that I have is what allows me to push this positive message out. It's what allows me to be able to help all these people at scale. So if I'm not in a good headspace to respond to someone, I won't get too hurt about it. Because I get tens or hundreds of messages every week from all the different people, and some of them are massive essays that like they're emails that just you can't
They
read.
go on forever.
You know, they never stop, right?
I know, and
You got to draw a line at some point.
Yeah.
When I first started out, I was trying to respond to everyone I possibly could, and I see some people that are gaining a lot of traction online, and they say, "Send me a message. I respond to everyone," and I go, "That'll wear off," because you can't. It gets to a point where you can't, unless that's all you're doing all day. It's a full-time job. You can't do it.
no,
Yeah.
and yeah, people get very critical of that in your message you say you're always there, and that's where the videos you got to take out that. Even though I'm talking in a video, take the message out. It's for you. It's for everybody, because I can't send an individual message to everybody.
Yep. And I'm also thinking, like, do not refrain from sending that message, because I know how many people I get so many messages, and they say at the top of the message, they go, what do they say? They say, "I know you're never going to see this, but you're probably never going to even read this," or, "Look, I'm sending you this. I know you probably won't see it, but," and this is how they always start these convos at this. I'm like, do not go into a message like that, because I do see it a lot of the time, and I do try and read them. But B, it's like, don't belittle yourself. Like, tell me the message that you want to share, and be open and honest and share it. And I hope and I try to get back to you. And I think there's no harm in shooting that message. If there's a message you want to send to someone that you love, send it. We appreciate it more than you know.
I agree with that. It's funny when you do these podcasts saying that, believe it or not, I learn just as much from like talking to people like you, and you start to make my thoughts go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what, and that's that thing of being open. So yeah, I do want to say that our chat today, like, there's things this afternoon that I want to do that you've given me ideas for.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I really do. I do appreciate it. I got into this debate with somebody. I won't say a name, but it was a podcast about Married at First Sight, and she got really shitty when she found out I was doing another podcast about. I've done 2 podcasts in regards to Married at First Sight, and I said to her, she got really. And some other girls cancelled me because they heard, and it got into this bitchiness about podcasts and if you're doing their show, I don't want you to do my show. Don't worry about, like, you'd just be going over old stuff. And I tried to school these three podcasts. I said, do you understand, at the point that I come on your podcast, you're the talent. It's not me. My fucking story is my story. What you've got to do is you've got to pull something out of me that the other 2 didn't. So if you think you're going to ask the same question as the other girl,
it's on you.
You're just saying you're a shit podcaster. You're a copycat of the other one. I said, do you think, and I'm not saying, the only reason I fucking know, I'm not saying I'm like Bradley Pitt or whatever. I mean, Brad Pitt or whoever. Do you think they make one movie and they just talk to one interviewer? They get different. The energy is going to come from you, and you've got to pull something out of me that the others didn't.
But also, like, that's the difference between someone reading some questions and a good interviewer.
Yeah.
Like I had a cool bunch of questions. I didn't even look at the questions, because if I'm listening, that's where the best conversation is going to come.
It's just going to go wherever,
and that's
it goes.
where it's going to go. And so I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate the stuff you've been sharing, getting open and honest, and sharing your story in a new light.
I got to be honest. I've been in a fucking blank for 2 weeks. I've been in a shit spot. I haven't posted anything. Everyone's been on to me going, what's wrong? What's up? I haven't posted. And through our interview today, it's like my brain's like engaged again. I went, oh, fucking that's cool.
That's awesome.
I got some shit to say. Yeah.
Good on you. And mate, you're amazing. It's so inspiring. You got some awesome stuff happening, and just your story is literally a movie, and I'm keen to watch that movie one day. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and I really appreciate it.
Mate, you've definitely opened my mind up, and it's been a little bit closed for the last couple of weeks. And this is the first podcast I've done in 2 weeks, but you've done something to me that's actually inspired me. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And if you guys have made it to the end, thank you. Leave a review on Spotify or Apple. It helps the show grow. It helps us get amazing guests just like Tim back on the show. And hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. But we are going to sign out for this week. Thank you guys so much. We are signing out, and I'll see you next week.